And now you're live.
Welcome to House Education, Wednesday, May 28th, 2025. We are discussing the Senate proposal of amendment on H 480, which is currently on the calendar, on the notice calendar. And so we are going to run through a side by side of it. We have heard 99% of this before, so it should be a pretty quick presentation. All yours.
Thank you. Beth St. James, Office of Legislative Counsel.
That was some unspoken communication.
Okay, I threw this side by side together rather hastily. I don't know how to get the first page to not be blank. Let's move on. It's fine. Okay, section 1. The House, what you all passed is on the left, and what the Senate passed is on the right. This is the update to the behavioral threat assessment team's implementation section. You didn't touch this language, but the Senate is kind of breaking up what is required for getting behavioral threat assessment teams up and running. So current law requires all actions necessary to establish a team not later than July 1, 2025. What this amendment does is it says you've got to identify team members by July 1, 2025, and then take all actions necessary by October 1, 2025. And then effective dates, the Senate kept your change to section 1480, which was emergency operations plans, and then broke up the effective dates for the behavioral threat assessment teams. So you all moved the entire section to July 1, 2027 for effective dates. The Senate made it a little more nuanced, where that section will take effect on July 1, 2025, except the section to have the team will take effect on October 1, 2025, the subdivision. And then the data collection piece will start on July 1, 2027.
I'm assuming that was all done with AOE consultation.
Yes. This was all, I believe this was all pulled forward by AOE, yes. And then, oh, look at a place where I should have highlighted and I didn't.
So you underlined.
Section 2. This is an amendment to the behavioral threat assessment team statute. You'll see this in a couple places throughout this bill where there is a delineation between who's responsible for procedures and who's responsible for policies.
Oh.
School board's policies, superintendent is procedures. That is in state law. I will not forget it. So that's all that's happening here.
Wait, can you repeat that one time?
Yep. So current law requires school boards to develop policies and procedures for behavioral threat assessment teams. This language is saying school board develop the policy, superintendent develop the procedures. And that split in duties is actually in Title 16 law. The Senate made no changes to the post-secondary schools charter in Vermont cleanup. The Senate made no changes to the public bids exemption for purchases from food service accounts. The Senate made no changes to virtual learning. The Senate made no changes to the BOCES grant. The Senate made no changes to the Flexible Pathways Initiative requirement that schools include all military options in their post-secondary materials, post-secondary option materials provided to students. Secretary of Education, the Senate did make changes here. So you all on the left-hand side added language that required the state board to begin a robust national search not later than 60 days after public notification of the resignation of a Secretary of Ed. The Senate put in a step before that and said not later than 30 days after public notification of a vacancy or anticipated vacancy in the position of Secretary of Ed. The governor shall send a letter to the chair of the State Board of Education asking the board to initiate the candidate selection process for a new Secretary of Education. And the governor's letter shall include direction as to the governor's preferred candidate qualifications and experience. And then the Senate kept the 60-day search requirement. So but it tied it to something different. So the House is 60 days of the vacancy, and the Senate is 60 days of receiving that letter from the governor. The state board needs to begin that national search process. And the Senate kept the House's language about allowing the state board to request money from AOE for the search process.
So,
Does that mean 90 days?
Yeah.
It could be as much as 90 days?
yes.
For the search, yes. So if everyone waited until the last day of this, then the search could theoretically not be underway until day 89 or 90. No similar provision in the House for Section 10. This is an update to some of the literacy language you all passed last year. First change is to the section title. Current law has preventing early school failure reading instruction, and the Senate made it slightly friendlier with Foundation for Literacy. Just a more positive title on what this section is standing for. The big substantive change to this section was last year in the literacy bill, you are requiring, not in this section, but in other sections of law, evidence-based literacy instruction for grades K through 3. This section is requiring supplemental reading instruction beyond that when kiddos are failing to meet proficiency standards. And so this says, for students in grades K through 12 and approved independent schools that are eligible to receive tuition, they all would receive supplemental reading instruction if their reading proficiency falls significantly below proficiency standards for the student's grade level. Section 11 is an amendment to the National Guard Tuition Benefit Program, which allows it kind of broadens what you could get under the benefit program. So you could now get an undergraduate degree, a graduate degree, or certificates, and you can get any amount of them paid for through this program, as long as the cost does not exceed twice full-time in-state tuition at UVM. So if you already have 2 bachelor degrees and they were paid for through the National Guard Tuition Benefit Program, you could go back and get a graduate degree on the National Guard Tuition Benefit Program, as long as the total for all of the degrees you are getting under the program is less than 2 times the full-time in-state tuition charged by UVM. Then there was an update to the title of a committee. Section 12. This is the cardiac response plan language. So what the Senate did is they amended the Emergency Operations Plans statute to add a new subsection to require that the template that all emergency operation plans need to be built off of includes provisions for acute cardiac events in schools, and then provisions for what those provisions need to include. And those provisions also need to include an athletic emergency action plan for all of the public or approved or recognized independent schools with an athletic department or organized athletic program. And then school districts would be required to have a cardiac emergency response plan developed and ready for implementation beginning in the 26-27 school year. Section 14 is an amendment to section 3448F in Title 16, which is in the State Aid to School Construction chapter. It is regarding energy performance contracting, and you can see in subsection B here, a district may enter into a performance contract pursuant to this section for a period not to exceed 20 years. And what the Senate wanted to do, and current law requires voter approval of performance contracts if the terms of the contract are going to exceed 10 years. And the Senate wanted to kick that out to 20 years, but because you can't have a contract for longer than 20 years, we're just removing that voter approval requirement altogether. Section 15, an amendment to school library material selection policy. This is a law you all passed last year. And the main substantive change here is, again, that superintendent versus school district delineation, policy versus procedure. So school districts are required to develop the policy, and then superintendents would develop the procedures related to reconsideration and retention of materials. And then there were years of reference for the various freedom to read statements that policies need to be based on. So 2004 for the American Library Association's freedom to read statement, and 2024 for the Vermont freedom to read statement. Section 16 is an amendment to a piece of session law you all passed in 2023, creating a moratorium on the approval of new independent schools. This language says that a change in either tax status or conversion to a nonprofit organization by a therapeutic approved independent school, absent any other changes, shall not affect the approval status of the school. So if there is a currently approved therapeutic independent school that is currently a for-profit organization and it wants to move to a nonprofit organization and keep being the same school, then that's not going to trigger the moratorium. That's not going to affect their approval status. If the school is making other changes, that may trigger a review. Section 17 is cell phones. So what the Senate did is they removed all the findings and they added your intent language the same, but they added it to statute. The House version, what you all voted out of committee and gave to the Senate, had both the findings and intent living in session law. So they got rid of the findings and they pulled the piece of intent language in to be the first section in your new subchapter. They kept the definitions the same. And they kept a lot of what you all did the same. So the first change was that, so they're keeping it a model policy format. The first change was that the Secretary of Education, in developing the model policy, in addition to consulting with the School Boards Association, needs to consult with VISA, the Vermont Independent School Association, and a representative from the Vermont Coalition for Phone and Social Media Free Schools. They also changed the word Bluetooth to wireless. And then in the exceptions in subdivision 2A, they added, so they kept everything about an individualized healthcare plan, IEP or 504 plan, but they added a piece for international students. So if such use is required to meet an international student's special education needs or as part of a disability accommodation, and the international student does not have an IEP or 504 plan, then the need for such use shall be documented in a manner the school deems appropriate. They also added to the exception of use approved by an administrator for an academic purpose, they expanded it to school-sponsored athletic or co-curricular purpose for the most limited use reasonably possible, or for compliance with the McKinney-Vento Homeless Assistance Act. The policy adoption pieces remain the same, so schools need to adopt these policies for the 2026-2027 school year, and they did not touch the social media piece. And they made no changes to the implementation policy or the implementation dates. And then here is the last section, substantive section, and this was a floor amendment. Students attending a CTE center outside their service region. So a couple definitions. Receiving district means a school district receiving tuition on behalf of a student to whom it provides CTE education. Sending district means a school district paying tuition on behalf of a student to a school district that provides CTE courses. Secondary students may apply for enrollment into programs offered at CTE centers outside their service region when the center in their service region does not offer the program in which they wish to enroll, or they are not able to enroll in the program of their choice. The school district of the student's residence shall pay tuition for that enrollment pursuant to an agreement between the sending district and the receiving district that specifies how costs for such enrollment shall be covered. Beginning in the 25-26 school year, a regional CTE center may provide transportation to and from technical center for students residing outside the technical center service region. If the student is attending pursuant to subsection B of this section, which is when they are enrolling outside their service region because there's a program offered that they don't have access to or they're on a wait list. Any changes in tuition charged by a career and technical center due to the acceptance of students residing outside of the CTE center service region shall be reconciled through the tuition reconciliation process outlined in state board rules. The school district that maintains a secondary school shall provide the requested directory information of enrolled students to a CTE center located outside the school district's assigned CTE service region for the limited purpose of the CTE center providing information to students and their parents about CTE center offerings in the following situations. The school district's assigned CTE center has a wait list for enrollment. Students were denied entry to their assigned CTE center or a program operated by their assigned CTE center, or when a student has interest in a program not offered by the student's assigned CTE center. And that would take effect on passage. And that's it.
So in section 18, A, you have told us in the past that much of this is sort of restating current law. And it seems to me like letter C, it does refer to a school year, which I think we could probably say is to clarify that a district may provide transportation.
They're already able to do that. There's just no requirement that they do it.
But this does not require us.
That's correct. The plain language doesn't. How it's interpreted out there, I can't speak to that.
But the overall,
All problem.
Questions?
And suspenders?
That's the only one. Why?
So once we vote on this, we have passed the bell-to-bell policy for the state of Vermont.
No,
Who's
the
say by we?
the entire chain, we have to.
Right, oh, right, of course, yeah.
Yeah, and then the governor's signed bill.
Right.
So
I mean, he's not indicating he won't, though.
we heard one way or the other. Yeah. All right, so this is our, I won't say it's our last opportunity, but our last sort of formal committee opportunity while we have legislative council for any questions on this. Okay, great. Thank you. We are going to let this sort of go. We're not going to rush it.
Yeah.
There's no need to. We may not bring it up on the floor till Friday, and we'll hold off on a formal vote at the committee
Okay,
until then.
so it's on notice for tomorrow.
Notice for
Saying it may
tomorrow.
be postponed to
Right.
Friday,
Right.
depending on what the calendar looks like.
But I'm, great, good.
but in terms of presenting on the floor, the phone section, I appreciate you pointed out the differences. But we, the House, did not actually pass that bill, so
Right,
really the Senate bill is new language to the body.
Yes.
And I will present this.
You are going to have to present it as such, yeah. That's if it's a new bill.
Yeah.
But I would definitely point out
Yeah, it's
that we,
helpful for me, but.
that we took 3 weeks of testimony and provided the
Yeah.
language to the Senate.
so Aaron, Rep. Brady's gonna present it.
Thanks.
Okay, good. We are